Gonna give it once again a few seconds. All right, wow. Well, it's always interesting to try new things and work out how this YouTube thing is working. All right, so the Q&A feature is running, and there are 5 people here. And I wonder how it looks on the end of the viewer, because I've never used it. I've never posted a question. Okay, am I live? Yes, we're good. It's the Nazarite. Once again, take 2, bringing you Hebrew lore from days of yore. And so we have questions here. So let's see. We can select a question. We can select it, and then it goes, here we go. So, okay, so Robert says, how you doing? So, as I said just a couple of minutes ago, I had a wedding last night, not my own. Mine was a while ago. A friend of mine from Tzfat, and a yeshiva buddy. And so I sat at a Tzfat table. I saw people last night that I haven't seen in over 20 years. And it was so much fun seeing what people are up to and trading war stories, as it were, not actual war, right? Yeshiva days. And it was such a nostalgic evening. Plus, the groom, somebody who I've known for over 20 years, is somebody who's been looking for a wife for many, many years. And he's about my age. And he was looking for a very long time. And he found his bride. I could not be happier for both of them. It is such a wonderful thing. It was a wonderful wedding at the hills of outside of Jerusalem, overlooking Jerusalem. It was beautiful. It was gorgeous. I danced my ass off, and it was so nostalgic. It was so lovely. I give so much thanks to Adonai. So how am I doing? I'm doing really well, had a productive day. I barely got any sleep last night, but it was totally worth it. And I'm looking forward to Pinky. Pinky was not well. Pinky had indigestion, and so I was a little fearful for her yesterday and today on what will happen. Will I have to take her to the vet? But I did not. She seems to be doing well. I actually boiled chicken in this kitchen because we keep a vegetarian-vegan kitchen, a vegetarian-vegan kitchen. And I boiled chicken for the doggo for the first time I've done it before, but rice, bland chicken, just boiling, right? Boiling water, rice, chicken, no spices, no add-ons, no oils, nothing, just to get her diet, her digestion back in order. So there was also that of whether or not I'm going to have to run to the vet in the middle of the day, but here I am. It's almost 10:15 at night, and I'm here and I'm broadcasting, and it's lovely, and I'm so happy to be here. Now, we spoke on Sunday, right? So it's Tuesday night, yes. We spoke on Sunday for one of the first live streams ever since I restarted streaming about a month ago. It was one of the only live streams that I've had recently where I was able to go back and edit the title, because it was mainly dealing with that one thing for an hour, right between 10 and 11 p.m. And then the finals, the Euro Cup finals were on, so I had to dash. But we were talking about, Sneezer and I mainly, we're talking about the validity, the legitimacy, the case, or for the state of Israel, or lack thereof, right? The lack of a case. And I want to continue that dialogue here tonight, at least to some degree, mainly because there were a couple of things in the chat on Sunday that I didn't get to, but I thought it was really poignant, I suppose, that took up the hour, even though I didn't mean for it to, but these things are spontaneous and things happen as they are, and the live stream is exactly that, right? It's a spontaneous dialogue, and I love it because it also kind of mirrors the way that I treat prayer in everyday life, right? I usually don't read the standard book of prayers, which I did for many years, but now for over a decade now, I've been with the spontaneous dialogue with the Most High, the spontaneous prayer as it is, raw, uncensored, and that's kind of what we're doing here. Obviously, I do censor myself to some degree because it's YouTube. Other people in the chat censor themselves to some degree. Why, the last time that somebody did not censor themselves, my channel got deleted. So that's not going to happen again, I hope. Point I'm trying to make is that I love it that I find that this live stream mirrors right? This dialogue between us humans, it also mirrors in some way the kind of dialogue, ongoing dialogue that I have with the Most High, and it's lovely. So I was able to go back and retitle the video from Sunday because it was mainly dealing with Messiah, the state of Israel, and a little bit more. I found that interesting. So let's see. That's how I'm doing. Let's go to the questions. Are there any other questions? Yes. Peace and Coffee. Let's select your question. Hello, Peace and Coffee. And go back here. It's nice to use this. It's nice to use this feature. I should do it more. Have you heard of Rabbi Moshe Steinerman? No, I don't think so. I think he lives in Tzfat, Israel. He runs the I Love Torah YouTube channel. So I do think I know that channel. I think I was directed to that channel. I don't remember what the context was, but I do know that channel. I don't know him, like practically speaking, or personally, right? But I do know that channel. I watched a couple of videos there. I'm certainly on board with most of the things that I listened at the time that he said, but it's not a channel I follow regularly. So have I heard of that rabbi? I'm not sure, but I have heard of that channel, and I watched a couple of videos. I mean, way back, like a couple of years ago. Okay, let's see. Glad you enjoyed it, said BMXers. Wow, Mazal Tov. Congratulations to your friend. Yeah, it was a lovely wedding. I was very thankful to be there. Will you ever go, asks BMXers, but not with the Q&A. He asks in the regular chat, will you ever go to a Muslim wedding or like a Christian wedding not held in a church? Yeah, if it's not held in a church, then I think I would. Definitely. You know, there's a line in Friends, and I've quoted this in the past because it resonates with me, and it did even back at the time. I think it's maybe the first season or maybe the second season where there's the lesbian wedding, right? Ross's ex-wife and her girlfriend turned fiance turned wife. They have a lesbian wedding on Friends, first or second season, and the woman who is leading the service, who is leading the wedding, right, and officiating, she starts it by saying, nothing makes God happier than when two people, any two people, come together in love. There is something to that. That doesn't mean that I condone any and all relationships. It doesn't mean that the Torah condones any and all relationships. But there is definitely something to that line of coming together in love. You could argue over what that means practically speaking and like action, right? On the ground, activity-wise. You could make a case for and against certain modes of conduct, right? And ways of behaving. But as for coming together in love, in unity, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I don't think there's any case to be made against it. Of course, there are such things, let's say, as false humility. There are certain times when an attribute which is positive, 99% of the time, 1% of the time, would turn negative. There is such a thing as too much of a good thing. I mean, we know this from everyday life. And I don't speak in absolutes. But as for the question, will I ever go to a Muslim wedding or a Christian wedding not held in a church? I'm inclined to say yes. I'm inclined to say that I would. All right, let's go back to the chat from... Wait. Andre, any wedding bells ringing soon, Robert asks? That's a good question. Are there any other questions in the question? Okay, here we go. Let's select Sneezer's question. Let's go with that. Sneezer asks, how is a church different than a synagogue? Because a church, fundamentally, is a place of worship for Christians. Christians, at least to some degree, hold Christ to be either Son of God or a dead man walking, a dead man who should be followed. There are people who kneel. There is this, right, different sigils, if that's the right term, right? People bow before the cross. There are different images, graven images as well, of Yeshua, of the saints, let's say, and of Christ inside of churches. which makes it a place of false worship. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad for the Christians, obviously, but it means that a Hebrew man or woman who are under the yoke of Torah, who are under the covenant of Torah and the Ten Commandments, they cannot pray in a place where there is idol worship, because it would kind of be a contradicting, it would kind of go against, it would kind of go, meaning that we can pray in a mosque, but we can't pray in a church. So the difference is exactly that. The difference is exactly that. That's where it sort of breaks down, where certain people consider the Christian God, right, to be Christ, to be Jesus, at least to some degree. And even those who don't consider him God, or Son of God, or part of the Trinity, they do consider him something worth worshiping, and they do worship. I can't speak for every single denomination, obviously, but Christians are called Christians because of Christ and because of the pedestal on which they place Jesus, and that makes it not a place for Hebrew men or women who want to keep Torah and commandments. So that's the big difference. That's the big difference between churches and synagogues, and why you can be in a synagogue if you're a Hebrew man or a woman, you can be in a mosque, but you cannot be in a church. Likewise, I suppose you couldn't be in a place where, let's say, Buddha, right? Buddhists, to the best of my understanding, they don't consider the Buddha, right, Prince Gautama, to be divine, but they do worship him. And not just in the sense of admiration, I mean in the sense of images, statues. They kneel before him, they bow before him, they pray before him, even if not necessarily to him, because I don't know much about Buddhism worship. I know a little bit about Buddhism as a way, right, as a way, but not about the actual practical worship that Buddhists engage in. So I don't really know that I can say, but something like that. I hope that answers the questions. Yes, the Buddhas are realized incarnations of God, but I mean, it's a kind of, is it an incarnation of God? Because Buddha, right, Bodhi means enlightened one, right? And to be enlightened means that you were once in the dark. So according to that rationale, if they are incarnations of God, it would mean that God was also in the dark. And I don't know if that's something which also fits in with Torah and with commandments. So I'm not sure what to tell you, but I do not, in a place where there is idol worship, a Hebrew man cannot pray. A Hebrew man cannot be. And so we are commanded, at least in halacha, in rabbinic law, not to set foot in churches. I was part of a group in the summer of 1999. They went to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in the Old City over here. And I said, I can't, I needed to stay out, and I did. They all went in, they said it was amazing, and I had to say, all right, I'll take your word for it. In my understanding, says Sneezer, is it important? Then no, my dear. In my understanding, says Sneezer, mosque, church, and synagogue are all buildings that worship the same God. And then he says, fair enough, most churches do practice idolatry. So yeah, I guess, so we're in agreement here. Sneezer says, Jesus is the best Buddha, having sacrificed his life for all others. But see, here's the thing. Prince Gautama, right, Siddhartha, the Buddha, when he achieved nirvana, he didn't sacrifice himself in the sense of continuing on and into death and into the next world or whatever. He decided to take that and come down back to the earth and share the wealth of knowledge and share that idea of getting out of samsara, right, of the if I'm not mistaken, right, of the world of illusion, and to share that with the people, with the congregation, with the people of his community. That was his greatest sacrifice, I think. I think him achieving nirvana, but not remaining there at the top of the mountain, but coming down into the, into the dirt, into the earth, right? Coming down from the mountain. You can argue over the nature of the sacrifice, right? People say Yeshua, people say that Jesus died for their sins, And I say that, the sacrifice of Prince Gautama was also very noteworthy in the sense of he came down to share the enlightenment with the common folk, right? And he himself became a common folk. So let's see. The Buddhas are born all-knowing. Now, so the claim, if I'm not mistaken, is that the Dalai Lama is an avatar or a reincarnation of the Buddha. So are you saying, if I'm reading you correctly, that people believe that the Dalai Lama is born all-knowing? Does he need no training? Does he need no practice? I wonder how that goes down. If that is indeed the case, I wonder how that acts. I wonder how that plays itself out practically in the world. That would mean that the Dalai Lama is said to be the avatar of Buddha, right? The incarnation, the reincarnation of the Buddha when he's a child. Are there female Dalai Lamas, by the way? That's another good question, I think. I'm not sure. I don't think there have been, but I don't know. So talk to me more about Buddhism. I'm interested. About the Dalai Lama, about the Buddhas. Now, okay, let's continue. BMXer says, Robert, me, little Andre, no way. And if there will be, right, wedding bells, and if there will be, it will not be in a church if it depends on me. Robert says, Christians are against idol worship, statues, or false gods. I know a lot of IDF troops who go to India and they pray there where there is much idol worship. Right, a lot of people go into temples that halachically they are not allowed to go into because most of the Jews do not keep rabbinic law. Most of the Jews in the world do not keep halacha. Whether they are Orthodox or not, it simply is the case that those who keep strict rabbinic law are in a minority for a very long time already. Sneezer says he didn't make the ultimate sacrifice. No. And he is spreading wisdom. Okay, so you consider death the ultimate sacrifice because you're no longer living. But is it not also fair to say that that comes pretty close, right? With what Prince Gautama did, that he did not stay at the top of that proverbial mountain, but he came down to share the wisdom and the enlightenment with the people? Is that not also a kind of sacrifice that comes very close? I wonder. Because the whole thing is, people say that Jesus gave his life, but he's supposed to come back. Meaning that the Buddha did the same thing. He achieved nirvana, but came back. He did it kind of consecutively, right? He did it kind of immediately, if you will. I don't know the timeline there, but I know that he did it before he died. So the difference is kind of that Jesus, according to Christians, is taking his time coming back and making an appearance. All right, let's go back to the questions here, see if there are any more. Peace and Coffee asks another question. Let's go with that. Peace and Coffee says, do some Jewish people see praying to tzaddikim, to the righteous, as false worship or as idolatry? The answer is yes. Many Jews consider that idolatry. Orthodox Christian as the saints for prayers, like Orthodox Jewish people ask for prayers by tzaddikim. Here's the thing. Tzaddikim, righteous people, they can be a vessel, but they themselves are not the divine. Meaning, you can pray for those who have died in the sense of, may their merit, right, those who have left the body, may their merit be manifested here. May they be able to, right, those that are living and those that are dead, may they be able to channel the divine revelation and emanations to us here who are still drawing breath. But to pray to an actual human being, that is no good. That is idolatry. That is forbidden by the Torah. We are allowed to pray, right, on behalf of the good things that were done by the pious and the righteous. May this thing occur, right? It's contingent not on the person, but on their actions. Do you know what I'm saying? And that's a big difference, right? That's a big difference, right? We say that may the merit of those who came before us and what they did and their sacrifices, their actions, their good deeds, may they serve us here, those of us who are here now. There's also a lot of confusion and a great question about going to pray at the grave sites of righteous people, of people from the Second Temple, from people from 3,000 years ago, and people from way back, right? People even from more than that. Yeah, I mean, in Hebron, where the patriarchs are buried, and others. So some people do see praying to tzaddikim, to going to their grave sites and praying sort of to them, but it's not idolatry if you're saying, here I am making an effort, and may the good deeds and may the righteous actions of those who came before me be of use and be of service and be of utility to me who is here now still working in a living, breathing human body. So it's a distinction there that I make and that many other people make, because the line sometimes is really blurred, seriously, especially in Hasidism, where the connection, what's called the hitkashrut, the connection to the tzaddik, to the Rebbe, is so vast and so all-encompassing that you kind of cancel yourself, you kind of nullify yourself, and give the Rebbe the keys to your salvation, if you will, here in this world, and he instructs you on pretty much everything. I mean, I'm taking it to an extreme, but there are certainly Chassids who do exactly that. They give the keys to their own life, if you will, to the Rebbe, and they completely nullify themselves and cancel themselves out. They have no will. It's only the will of the Rebbe which they go with, because the Rebbe knows your soul. The Rebbe knows your particular, unique, idiosyncratic way of achieving a connection with the Most High. And he is the great bridge, right? He is what's called a Nishmat Moshe. He is a spark of the soul of Moses, if you will. Moses being the bridge, right? Moses ascending to Sinai, receiving the Torah, coming down, right? If we spoke of the Buddha, it's kind of the same deal. And there are people who hold a spark, if you will, of Moses' soul, and it doesn't have to be an actual part of a soul. It's, figuratively speaking, some say practically speaking, but I'm saying, right here, right now, figuratively speaking, and in that sense, he is, right, much like Moses was the father of prophets, the tzaddik, the Rebbe, is the father of the righteous. And so you take on that role as a chassid, as a follower, a disciple in a Hasidic court. Again, not all of them, but it's certainly the case that with some or many, I'm not sure exactly. Okay, let's look for more questions here. Peace and Coffee continues. Oh, wait a second. Wait, if I click on it, do I select it? No, I need to physically click select. Okay, that's good to know. So are righteous souls in a state of dormition, not conscious? No. Righteous souls, according to tradition, they reside in Eden, right? Eden is the waiting room, because we haven't fulfilled our task there. And there is a kind of pool, right? There's a kind of collection of souls that were created, that the soul of Adam Harishon, of Adam, broke, right? The soul of Adam, again, figuratively speaking, broke apart into fragments, and each one of us has a fragment that corresponds with a different organ or place in the body of Adam. And so there are certain people who have a soul of the head. Certain people have a soul that comes from a fragment, right? A fragment from the foot. Some the heart, some the torso, some the liver. And depending on your fragment, on your unique, specific soul, it means that you have to engage in a specific task that corresponds with that original sin in Eden, right? Adam and the Eve, the serpent, placing blame, each one on the other one, the way that went on, and eventually getting cast out of Eden. And if we want to go back to Eden, we need to complete our task. And we each have our own individual task to fulfill, to complete, to engage, to contend with. And so The righteous souls who no longer need to go through any kind of reincarnation, the ones who fulfilled their task, they are in a waiting room that is called Eden. Now, there's a high Eden and a lower Eden, and I won't get into it now, but that's basically the case, at least according to some traditions. So they're not exactly dormant, not conscious. Well, that calls into question the nature of consciousness. If you are talking about bodily consciousness, the souls of the righteous, there is what's called an ibur. Ibur is when a soul, which is amorphous and disembodied, can kind of like possession, but in the positive sense, right? In the positive sense, a tzaddik, a righteous soul, can possess a living human being for a certain time in order to, let's say, in order for that soul to light up that living, breathing human being and direct it. This usually happens when there is some kind of connection, either like familial, right? Genealogically, right? Or a connection that has to do with where that soul holds in Adam HaRishon, in the body of Adam, as it were. Meaning, if there's a righteous soul who has a fragment, right? The fragment of that righteous soul corresponds, let's say, with the left eye. And there is somebody here now in this world, living, breathing, walking, talking, whose soul is also a fragment of the left eye of Adam. There can be a kind of cosmic, spiritual connection between the two. And a tzaddik, the soul of a tzaddik, rather, the soul of a righteous person, disembodied, right, can come here and possess. I need to find a better way, right? Ibur is kind of impregnation. That's kind of what it means in Hebrew. Right? Obar is fetus, and ibur is impregnation. Something along those lines. There may be a better word for it, but it's kind of like you become pregnant. When you become pregnant, you're not pregnant forever. You're pregnant for a specific period of time where the fetus is growing inside of you, and once your task is finished, the fetus can enter the world. In the very same way, a soul of a righteous person is not dormant, not conscious in the way that we are, but when there's an ibur, it means that that soul can come and share a body, if you will, with somebody who is here to help them fulfill something, to give them wisdom, to give them counsel, whatever the case may be, to light up something inside of them that can orient them, guide them, direct them, and then it leaves, which is why it's called an ibur, or at least to some degree that's why it's called an ibur. Okay, let's continue here. I'm not going to go with another question right now. I'll go with the chat. And then I'll go back to it for a different question. Hello to other people who are here. Are there other people here? It says that 6 people are here, 2 likes, 7 people, and 2 likes. Thanks so much for all the likes and all the awesome. Oh wait, Kareem Abd Arzak. Hello, good to see you if you're still around here. Okay, let's see. Let's continue here. I'm going up the chat. Where did I stop? Buddha, all-knowing, okay. He didn't make the ultimate sacrifice, and here we are. Sneezer says to Robert, and yet they pray to the cross or worship one name above others. Right, so they were discussing whether or not Christianity is idolatry, right, in the chat. BMXer says, there's a joke about a Jewish atheist family in Germany, and when the son came home, he told his father they learned about the doctrine of the Trinity in school. So the father told him, what? A Trinity? There's only one God, and we don't believe in him. That's a lovely little joke. Sneezer says, to die and come back, that is the ultimate return of mountain. The other Buddhas have not returned, Jesus has. Well, I'm not saying that. I'm not equating or conflating Jesus's journey and his coming back, if you will, according to Christianity, with Buddha's. I'm just saying there are similarities between the stories, at least to some degree. But maybe I'm just reaching at things that aren't really there. Maybe. BMXers. Robert says to Sneezers, evangelical Christians pray to God through the name of His Son. Catholics have a sense of paganism mixed They may pray to a cross. Okay. Sneezer says, Robert, I'm speaking general, of course, different sects, different ways. Yes, obviously, no absolutes, different sects and different ways. I noticed, says Robert, you say Jesus not instead of your normal Yeshua. Well, I go back and forth. I have been saying Yeshua for a very long time. It's true. Sneezer says it's still idolatry. Normal. I use the name I speak with him by. And I'll generally say God to non-Christians, says Sneezer, but to be precise when I am speaking of the life, teachings, and resurrection inside us. I'm sorry, Sneezer, I'm not exactly connecting the dots here between what you said right before and what you said then. Maybe it's something that I said that you're reacting to. I'm not sure. So sorry about that. Sneezer says, Robert says, who is the Son of Man walking around in the furnace in the Tanakh? Now wait, which furnace? Are you talking about the furnace of Daniel? No, wait, Daniel was in the lions and Hananiah. Are you talking about Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah in the furnace? Or are you talking about which furnace? Can you give me chapter, verse, book? I'd love to, because it sounds familiar, but I don't know it offhand. Look, as for, even without knowing the book, chapter, and verse, even without looking it up, the prophets, everything in the Bible, everything in the Tanakh has a physical element to it, but a spiritual root. And there's a progression, right? There's a kind of chain of revelation from the very spiritual, amorphous, unfathomable, unknowable, all the way down here to the physical, to the dirt, to the earth, to the sight, smell, touch, sound, speech, right? Here, physical earth, electrical signals, perception, conventions. And when there are certain things, the Torah, let's say, speaks of the arm of God, the finger of God, the eyes of God. God has none of these things, right? There are revelations called eyes of God, finger of God, arm of God, will of God. These are all revelations. And so the Son of Man walking around in the furnace, if I had to guess, again, not knowing chapter and verse, it's that idea of the Son of Man has to do with the practical revelations here, much like we see, right, with the lower sfirot, with the lower revelations of Tiferet and Malchut. And that furnace usually pertains to the left hand, to din, to judgment, withholding, the hand that pushes away, the left hand. But maybe you'll come back to it later, or I'll come back to it later when I'm in the chat here. Karim says, brother, I think you are clever, but the Islam is the right way as short. You have to choose your way. I'm not you. Bro, I'm not ready to talk deep with you, but this is my opinion. Well, okay, you're entitled to your opinion, and I have a lot of issues with Islam because of where I am and where I'm from and things I've seen and things I've been through, and I've mentioned this many times in the past, and I appreciate the kind words. I don't think I'm clever. I think I have my moments, but personally, I don't think I'm clever. As for Islam being the right way, for Muslims, it definitely is. The thing is that they insist that it's also the right way for everybody else. That's something that the Torah does not insist on, and I think I would take issue with any faith, religion, or way of life that originates in the divine, if you will, that claims this is it, the final way, the final word, the final testament, that's it. Because that immediately cuts off everything from then onward. And while that be precisely what Islam is going for, and to some degree Christianity, the Jewish way, the Hebrew way, does not operate in the same way, obviously. And I'm happy with what I'm doing right now. So if you're not ready to talk deep, voila, it's all good. It's all good. I appreciate your opinion, and I thank you for sharing it. By the way, says BMXers, I finished watching Vikings Valhalla yesterday. It didn't say why it's called The Tree of Life anywhere. Now wait, it's a show. Did you binge it? like vroom, in a couple of days, or is it a mini series of, a couple of episodes that are an hour long, or what's the format? Sneezer says Jesus is the example and official King of Kings, but only a single perspective of God. Right. Okay. But you do say it here in words that it's a perspective of God, and I'm not sure how to take that, but I know that there are many Christians who treat Jesus as God, not just the King of Kings, right? But the King of the King of Kings, right? A title usually reserved for the Most High, right? The Most High. Melech Malchei Melechim, the King of the King of Kings. Sneezer agrees with Karim there. Let's see. Let's go back, see if there are any other questions right now. Peace and Coffee. Peace and Coffee asks, right? Is there a word to describe bowing to only God and a word that can describe bowing to an angel out of reverence and fear? I heard there are two separate words, but often people confused these words. Well, let's put it this way. There is kri'ah and hishtachavaya. There's bowing and there's prostrating. Now, this was done in both cases, actually. So in the Hebrew Bible, there's no difference. There's no real difference in the sense of God versus a messenger of God. So those are the two words that come to mind, kri'ah and hishtachavaya, right? Bowing and prostrating. But I don't think there are two separate words for that particular instance of bowing to God versus a messenger of God out of reverence and fear. It might come to me later, and if it does come to me later, I will certainly try and keep it in mind and keep you appraised of what's gone through my head. But as far as I can tell, like quickly going through my mind here, there is no difference. There is no difference because a messenger of God, right, acts as a revelation of God. And what we have is all different revelations. So whether it's the fire that was on the altar, or whether it's the angel that appeared to Jacob, or to Abraham, or to Joshua and Jericho, or to Samson's parents, it's all different revelations of the Most High. And to show, again, I said this earlier when we were discussing Joshua and Jacob, to show that reverence and fear, and by fear I don't mean, I mean the higher fear, right? The fear of falling short. There's also the lower fear of, I fear sinning and missing the mark, that too, to be sure. But to show that respect and reverence helps keep the human being in check, helps keep you connected to the ground while your head is, floating in the clouds. And that's the ideal for the Hebrew man as far as I'm concerned, right? Head in the clouds, feet firmly on the ground. Maybe not the ideal, it's my ideal, as I say. Whoa, Yodidiao is in the house. Oh my God. And Bloodnose is here. Hello to both of you. Hello to both of you. Wow, Yodidiao, been a long time, man. Been a long time. What is Sheol? Asks Peace and Coffee. Sheol corresponds to, let's say, the Greek Hades, the underworld. It's the world of the dead in the sense of that it's considered to be down. Now, there is no up, down, left, right, high or low in the spiritual. We use those terms, we borrow them from the physical in order to reach an understanding about them. Right? Much like we use things like the eyes of God, the arm of God, the finger of God, but God has none of these things. Sheol is the name given to the underworld. But that's basically it. That's basically it. Let's continue here in the chat. Where, oh wow, so many comments. Todaliyah. I give praises, I give thanks to Adonai. What an opportunity this is. What a lovely little group this is, a lovely little study group. We were talking about study groups last night at the wedding, and People there have continued in their Orthodox path. A few of them became teachers, many musicians. It's amazing the amount of teachers and musicians that come out of a Tzfat yeshiva. Also, other Nazarites have come out of the yeshiva that I was a part of. A friend of mine said, I think I've mentioned this, a friend of mine, the friend that got married last night, he told me, I think that our yeshiva has generated more Nazarites than any other yeshiva in modern day Israel. I can see how that can be the case. And even then, it's just a handful of Nazarites, but that's still a lot more than other yeshivas. So it's interesting. It's really interesting, to say the least. Okay, let's continue here. Okay, Robert says, I see no difference praying to Yeshua than praying to a dead rabbi and lighting a candle at his grave. Right. No. If somebody is praying to the rabbi, there's no difference. That's praying to the dead. It is not the Torah way. It is not the Hebrew way. If you are lighting a candle in the sense of that the candle of God is the soul of man, as it says in Proverbs, Ner Adonai nishmat Adam chofes kol chadrei baten, right? What's the correct verse? Let me see if I, right? So the candle of God is the soul of man, which seeks, which permeates all of the inner, what would be chadrei baten? Permeates all of your kishkas, right? It's inside of you. So in that context, it means that when we light a candle for the dead, we light it in order to symbolize the light, right, of the soul. The righteous soul that has passed, the soul that we have now, and the connection that can be between them. So if you're praying to the dead, that is not the Hebrew way. If you're praying, may the actions of the dead hold merit for us who are here living and working and trying to become better, that's a different story. That's a very different story. Now, like I said, a lot of people blur those lines, and that's not a good thing in my estimation. Not a good thing. But yes, it would be the same thing. In Jeremiah, continues Robert, says God is everywhere, so therefore you can pray everywhere, no kotel, wall, or grave. Yes, the revelation of Adonai is everywhere. You can pray everywhere unless it's defiled, right? Unless it's unholy, unless it's unclean, right? If you have just defecated and you are right there in the bathroom, you can't start praying there. If you must, for whatever reason, keep it in your head. Say the words in your mind. Hear them clearly in your mind. Picture the Hebrew letters, picture the punctuation, picture the crowns of the letters, the melody, but don't let it leave your mouth. And that's only if you must, if there's like no other option, and there usually is another option. So you don't need, however, there are different revelations of the Most High, of Shekhinah, of lower Shekhinah, more particularly. The lower Shekhinah, the lower feminine presence, that can permeate, that can have an effect in certain dwellings, like in certain people, like the temple or the tabernacle themselves. So a gravesite of a holy person, of a righteous man, of a tzaddik, it can have an effect in the sense of that. They say that according to tradition, those who are truly righteous, because the soul is basically split up into 5. Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya, Yechida. Nefesh being never mind. Nefesh is the lower one, like the lower spirit. And they say, according to the Midrash and according to the Talmud, if I'm not mistaken, the external teachings and the oral traditions, that the nefesh resides in the bones that are buried. And even if the bones turn to dust, there is a kind of nefesh, the lowest of the lowest of the lowest of like an imperceptible kind of spirit that still dwells in the dust of the bones of the righteous. It's this idea of always being able to make a connection. If you are living, there is a part of that tzaddik that is, figuratively speaking, some say actually practically, but let's say figuratively for the sake of the argument. There is a part of that tzaddik, of that grave, right, of that body, that still holds life. If we recall in Ezekiel, right, Ezekiel is brought in by the Spirit of God to a great, what's the word I'm looking for? Well, anyway, to a place. And there are dry bones there. And Adonai says, Ezekiel, Ben Adam, son of man, will these bones live? And Ezekiel says, you know, if I'm not mistaken, he says, you know. And then he tells Ezekiel to call the wind, to call the spirit from the four corners of the earth, from the four sides, and bring them together and animate those bones. And the wind, the spirit, the animating spirit of God, is called by the prophet, by the living, in order to animate the dead. Right? And this is all in his mind's eye. Right? Don't forget this. This is all in the prophet's mind, his vision, his prophecy. And sure enough, the bones stand up, and then, right, there's sinew, and then there's, right, the cartilage, and the blood, and the flesh, and it becomes, right, and then, only then, after the body is standing, then Ezekiel tells the wind to truly, like that breath of God, to enter them. In the very same way of dry bones being reanimated by somebody who's living, the people who are connected to the tzaddik, the people who go to these, who do it righteously, not those who pray to the dead, but those who go to the grave sites of the dead and who pray on, by their merit, right, in accordance with proper halacha and Torah. And they say, these righteous people, these prophets, these chassids, these tzaddikim, they did so many good things. They were so pious and so kind and such mensches, men and women alike, who were good, honest, decent, truthful people. And may it be that because of their merits, we will now benefit, and we will be able to call them to sort of be advocates for us here, because they are not living anymore, but we are. And to go to the grave is to say, there is a part of them, however low, that I can still connect with, even though they died. And in that sense, when you light the candle, it represents that connection between the dead and the living, or between the living and the dead who are to live. Something like that. I'm not sure if I'm saying it properly. Man, what a rant that was, huh? Let's continue. So yes, I understand what you mean, Robert. That was a long-winded answer to, or response, rather, not an answer, but a response, a comment on what you were saying. Sneezer says, I think the most important thing Jesus said was, forgive them, they know not what they do. Right? That's when he was taken away. Now, I know that I know that line. I knew it before I read my one reading of the New Testament I have under my belt, but I knew that line from the Lauryn Hill song. Which one? Well, anyway, it goes, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. Yeah, it's a good song. It's a good song. Incidentally, The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill is a great album. Really good. Lovely 90s beats. Show me an example, a better example of Jesus. It is his wish for you to do as well. I'm not sure what you mean, Sneezer. Show me a better example of Jesus. It is his wish for you to do as well. Could you dumb it down for me? I'm not getting you. Show me a better example than Jesus. Do you mean that people ought to be a better example of Jesus than Jesus himself? I'm not sure what you mean by that. So I'm sorry. Everyone who knows their own soul knows yours too. Everyone who knows their own soul knows yours too. I'm not sure what you mean. Thus, know thyself. That's interesting. Everyone who knows their own soul knows yours too. I have not known that to be the case. You might be right. In my personal experience, I haven't found that to be true. I have found that definitely, verily, you can make a connection with others because you know yourself. So you can make a connection with others in a very personal and very deep way. To say that you know their soul because you know your own, maybe. It does make some sense. I just don't know if I've ever thought of that line. I haven't thought of that line. In the beginning, when I first read it just now, it didn't ring true to my experience, but I'm probably the one who is wrong. I'm probably the one who is wrong. Because to know your own soul is to know yourself in the way that you are meant to be that image of God in your own special way. And so if you know yours, you could possibly also know others. But much like we don't share the psyche of another, we don't share consciousness of other beings, then it might be, by the same token, impossible or near impossible, highly rare to know another person's soul. And I think because of that idea of consciousness, and I do have that solipsistic streak running through my being. So I still maintain that I don't know if that's the case, but you can certainly say that's the case. Obviously, I'm not contradicting you. I'm saying that hasn't been my experience. Robert says, the Rebbe knows your soul, only God knows your soul. Okay, now that's one way of looking at it. That's one way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it is that the Rebbe knows, the tzaddik knows, right, where your soul holds in the body of Adam, as it were, in the original soul of Adam, which fragmented. And by knowing where exactly, precisely you are in that body of Adam, the tzaddik can then give you specific, very specific, highly specific rules and ways of being in the world that are unique to you and your mission and what you need to do, right? What is your task? What is your task? What are you here to do? Not just Torah and commandments, but you specifically within that milieu, within that framework, right? Because we know that, again, the 613 commandments are a general thing. A single person alone cannot do everything, right? Because you cannot be a priest and a Levite and an Israelite and a man and a woman and a king and a prophet. You can't. You can't be all of those things at once, for example. Meaning that you do have a piece of you that is entirely, wholly your own, even if reincarnated. The body is a reflection of that soul to some degree. So even if it is reincarnated, it's reincarnated in this specific body with its own restraints and with its own limitations that may have not existed in previous bodies and will never exist again. You're a unique creation, even if your soul is already it's not its first rodeo. And in that sense, the Rebbe does know your soul. Does it know it as God, the Creator, does? I have no idea. Likely, no. But if we're talking about God knowing, it's already a revelation of God and not God. And as such, it's a revelation, and the Rebbe can, I don't want to say the wrong thing here, but the Rebbe can be truly an empty vessel for those revelations. And the chassid, the disciple, also becomes a vessel, right? And it's all like channeling through, right? The Rebbe is channeling the divine will, and the chassid receives it and sends it back up, right? It's that top to bottom, bottom to top, that idea, right? In Jacob's ladder, the messengers of God are going up and down. It's a kind of, right? There's a motion here. There's a motion. Right? Emotion and a motion. Okay, let's continue. BMXer says, also, by the way, Bjorn from Vikings shows a BMXer with dreadlocks who was also in a Taco Bell ad and knows Tony Hawk, who knows Avril Lavigne, whom your brother almost played for. It's a small world. Hey, yeah, 6 degrees of separation, right? Cool story, bro. Got pics, Sneezer says. Sneezer continues. No, you know what? Maybe before I continue in the chat, let's see if there's another question here in the Q&A portion. Yes. Okay. Man, Peace and Coffee is bringing it. A lot of questions. It's okay. You answered the questions on the wording for worship, to bow and prostration. Those are the words I was thinking of. Oh, perfect. Great. Awesome. Peace and Coffee continues and asks, if these righteous souls and tzaddikim are with God, and the Lord is not God of the dead, but of the living, and for to God all are alive, to God all are alive. I don't know what that is, but okay. How can praying to tzaddikim or to saints be praying to dead? Well, let's put it this way. I'm not sure what you mean. I'm not sure what the quotation is. I mean, you have that in quotations. The Lord, here, wait, let's select this question and go back to the regular chat. Okay. The quote that you are bringing is, the Lord is not God of the dead. Is that you quoting me? Because I don't believe I said that to God all are alive. I did say that we follow the living and we don't follow the dead. But I didn't say to God all are alive. I wonder what you mean by that. So you'll have to clarify that if you're still here. You'll have to clarify that. How can, but regardless of your clarification, I'll try and address it anyway. How can praying to tzaddikim or to saints be praying to dead? Generally speaking, it's praying to the dead because they are dead. Thank you, I'm here all week. Try the veal. Yeah, so that's literally it. These are people who died. That's it. They're no longer living in the sense that you and I are living. Even if you do say that there is the lowest of the lowest life force dwelling in the bones, in the dust of their bones, that's in the earth, right? Even so, they are not living in the same way that you and I are living, and that already makes them something different, very different. Like I said, people blur the lines. People blur the lines. That's a problem, because we are not supposed to pray to the dead, right? We can consider them great sources of inspiration, follow in their footsteps, but not them. Do you understand what I'm saying? Right? There's a big difference here, and I hope that I'm expressing it in a way that's palatable and that can be received by you people. Right, you don't pray to the dead, you don't summon the dead. Right, exactly right. But you do pray and say, may the good things that they did while they were living, right? May their merits have merit for us here in this world, here and now. That is something you can do. Because as we know, when you leave this world, right? When you leave this world, all you take with you are Torah, commandments, and good deeds. That is all you take with you, what you accumulated in those things. That's it. That's all you take with you. Torah, commandments, and good deeds. At least according to the Torah, to the oral traditions, and to the midrash, the external teachings. Let's continue here. Wow, so many here. I don't know what to go. Oh wow, I just keeps going up or down rather. Okay, let's see. Yodidiao, it's so nice to see your name here in the chat. It's been such a long time. Wow, it just keeps going up and I can't. Cece, do you believe in God? All right, people. I've heard him call himself an atheist, so I wonder, but he may have been saying more like some people think he's an atheist. Interesting. Okay, wait, let's continue. Where was I? Sneezer says, actually, the atoms of Adam are spread throughout every human. Right, so it's kind of the same thing, where you have the physical being and you have the spiritual part, right? The body and the soul. So I hear what you're saying. BMXer says to Sneezer, there's a playlist only dedicated to that for that meetup with Bjorn if you want to see. So yeah, Bjorn, I've watched a few of his videos. He's quite a character. Definitely quite a character. Flimsbly proof? I don't know what that means. His real name is Alexander, though. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that. Bloodno says, I love listening to you, Hebrew Nazarite. You are an excellent teacher. Hey, you know what? I'm not teaching, I'm talking, right? It's a dialogue. You're teaching me, I'm teaching you, I suppose. It's a dialogue. It's not me lecturing, or sometimes it might come to that because I blah 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 blah. But either way, thank you. I appreciate the kind words. People said I should have been a teacher. Even recently, people said I should have been a teacher. Video footage is flimsy or flimsy or flimsy. Is that, I don't know that word. I don't know. CNN, says Sneezer, has been staging footage for 30 years. Wow, I wonder if that's true. Because while I don't doubt that people cook up stories in order to sell advertising time, especially legacy media, and while I don't argue for a second or doubt for a second that each of them has their own agenda, to stage footage, that's taking it, I wouldn't put it past them, but that's really taking it to like manufactured fake news. I'm not going to say unprecedented because that's not unprecedented. I find it, easy to believe that they've been doing that, even though I don't know that for a fact. Not only I wouldn't, it's not only CNN. I'm sure a lot of legacy media stage footage and do different, they have their own dirty tactics in order to keep people watching and keep the advertisers happy. Wow, I've been on for an hour. Todaleya. I give thanks to the Most High and to you, good people, here with me. 9 people over here in the chat, 2 likes, so many comments and questions. I love it. I love it. It's so much fun. This little study group is so much fun. It enriches my life. It does. Yes, says Robert, 60% of Israeli people don't care about Orthodox Judaism or the Torah, I found out. Right. Cultural Judaism is a thing. If pushed into a corner, and maybe even before they're pressed into a corner, they will say, I am a Jew and I am proud of it, and not in a vain sort of way, but simply, it's my heritage, it's my culture, it's my past and my present. And so there is like an undisputed connection, right? Even when we didn't have the land of Israel, even when there were people who were not righteous, religious, rabbinic, whatever, they were cultural Jews, for better or worse. So, CC Leathercraft, do you believe in God? And in which case, I must say, what do you mean by belief? And what do you mean by God? So if you're still here, I would love it if you could answer me, those 2 questions, and then we can take it from there. Sneezer says, I thought Rob was talking to me when he said you're using Jesus, not Yeshua, because of my use, no doubt. Right, because I'm addressing things you said, so I was using your terminology. I use Yeshu, I use Yeshua, I use Jesus. I haven't used Jesus or Jesus, but I might do that too. Now, in the Talmud, he is called Yeshu HaNotzri. But by the way, even then, it's disputed on whether or not they actually mean Jesus of Nazareth as it is brought down in the Christian tradition. And there are other people who had that name, who had the name Yeshu. It was in the Talmud, it's not a common name, but it does appear, meaning that it was a common name at the time of the Second Temple, for sure, Yeshu. And Messianics and others call him Yeshua, which is where I started calling him. Until I was in my 30s, I called him Yeshu, because that's what I was taught, and that's what it says in the Talmud, and it's also an acronym according to Orthodox, teachings, not like proper, just kind of things that are passed down to Orthodox kids and others, that Yeshu is actually an acronym for Yimach Shemo V'Zichro, which is may his name and memory be eradicated. Now, I have always felt that he was a Jewish man, those who followed him could have twisted it and warped it, and Christianity and churches and Trinity and Son of God, Lord and Savior, died for our sins. But that all came later, pretty much, by and large. A lot of that came later. And I always believed, for a very long time anyway, more than 2 decades easily, that Yeshu was a Hebrew man who lived and died a Hebrew man. If he did exist, that's how he lived and died. And so to say Yimach Shemo v'zichro, may his name and memory be eradicated, I felt it didn't do him justice, which is why later on in life I moved over to call him Yeshua, because I heard others call him that, and because I figured that even though it's not the Talmudic name, it's a name that's not an acronym, and it also has a kind of affinity to the word Yeshua, with a hey at the end, which means salvation or help or deliverance, something like that. Now, I don't want to name him after the acronym. I suppose I still do, but I don't consider the word Yeshu to be an acronym. I just consider it to be a name. And the Talmud, if it is indeed the very same Jesus of Nazareth, Yeshu HaNotzri, that is mentioned in the Talmud, if it is actually this very same one that the Christians follow and worship, then the Talmud says some really bad things about him. On the other hand, you need to take things in context, and the context of the Talmud is the 2nd century of the Common Era, 2nd and 3rd century of the Common Era, if I'm not mistaken. It was sealed in the 3rd century, if I'm not mistaken, meaning that churches and followers and people who are Christians were already a thing. And probably part of what our sages were trying to do is dissuade people from following Christianity. So even if Yeshua, Jesus, did have merit, by that time, by the time the Talmud was written and put together and sealed, it was not a good thing to be a Christian, for a Hebrew man anyway, to follow Yeshua, to follow Christianity. So that could be possibly, I'm not a scholar, I'm not a historian, I'm not a learned or educated man, but I can see how that might be the case, where the Talmud put it in there and made it so you would not want to follow in his footsteps. Okay, let's continue. Let's see if there is another question. Peace and coffee. Peace and coffee. Continuing. Peace and coffee. Continuing with the questions. Saying, the Lord is not God of the dead, but of the living, for to God all are alive. See, it's from the New Testament. That's why I didn't recognize the quote. But then we limit the idea, he says. We limit the idea of alive to flesh and blood. It implies the reposed are not conscious beings. Well, look, in the Talmud, in the Talmud or the Mishnah, anyway, in the oral Torah, it says, Tzadikim b'mitatam kuyim chayim. The righteous in death are called living. And this has to do with the fact that their soul is finally set free of their body, of the physical, meat and this meat sack that they were confined to, as it were. Now, they could do a lot through it. You can only perform the Torah and the commandments in an embodied soul. That's the only way to do it. However, there is great celebration when it's time to say goodbye to the body and for the body to go back to the earth, as it were, and for the soul to be liberated and elevated and go back to not being constrained, and in doing so, shine that much brighter for those who are here still living in the world of good and evil. So that quote, I don't know what it means in the context of the New Testament, right? Because I'm not a follower of the New Testament. But in the Hebrew tradition, we don't limit the idea of alive to flesh and blood. The idea of true living has to do with those who follow Torah and commandments here in this world, and the righteous ones who completed their task and are now waiting in the waiting room in Eden, they are called alive. So, right, tzadikim b'mitatam kuyim chayim. In death, they are still called living. Now, again, you can argue over the nature of that, but it's again to signify the connection that is possible, right? You can perceive the capacity for a connection with the tzaddikim, with the prophets, with the righteous, with the sages. When you call them still living, in a way, you can make a connection between you, a living human being, and somebody who is already without a body, but is alive in a different way, that is not physical, that is spiritual, that is metaphysical, that is outside of the body. And in that sense, Unrasi 4, hello, I am in Jerusalem. What about you? And in doing so, you're able to make a connection with those who have passed. Okay, another question. Should I go with another question? Yes, one more question from Peace and Coffee. No. Let's go back to the chat, and then perhaps a question from Peace and Coffee. Oh wow. Let's see. Yodidiawa, I'm not either. I'm okay. So you said Shalom Achi Hayakar. Achiha Kad, you wrote Hakad. I'm assuming it was supposed to be Hayakar. Beseder Gamur. Hakol Hakad, because it's Kof Dalet, and that's not a word, but I'm doing very well. I give thanks and praises to the Most High God. It's so much fun being here. Already an hour and 11 minutes, and I'm here, I'm doing my thing. It is so much fun. It is such a blessing to be here with you good people on this Tuesday night. I don't take it for granted. Every like, every sub, every little chat, every pop in, pop out that some rando does here in the chat. I deeply appreciate it. It's lovely. It's also been lovely since I started streaming about, 5 weeks ago? 4 or 5 weeks ago, to see how the numbers have gone up in the analytics. And, I mentioned the analytics exactly 28 days after I started broadcasting again. So it's just, look, I'm not looking for subs and likes, right? I'm looking for dialogue. I'm looking for making a connection. I'm looking for enlightening myself, and maybe in the process even enlightening a bit, others. I'm looking to gain experience and gain wisdom and gain knowledge and better myself through this. So in that sense, there is so much fun in seeing the numbers go up, because it means that more connections are being made inside and outside of these broadcasts. Because the algorithm, right, the more numbers, the more the numbers go up, the more the algorithm sort of suggests it and makes impressions, and that's how you get to people, and it's lovely. It's lovely to see it unwind organically, and disperse and reach people. Some of them stay, some of them don't. It's lovely. It really is lovely. HN. Oh, wait. What's going on here? Oh, what? Something happened to the chat, and I can't go up. Has there been so much that I'm not able to go back up? I'm not able to go back up for whatever reason, so I think I missed a ton of other questions. Okay, let's see. BMXers with dreadlocks. I'm just going to continue from where YouTube is allowing me to go. For some reason, I'm not able to go back to where I was in the chat. Okay, this is most religions today. Why are you not Christian? Why are you not Muslim? BMXers says. Sneezer said Jesus was God in human form. Of course, that's not the complete God, but it's still God, just like you and I are. Well, that's exactly where we differ. This is the potential of the image of God. Right? Like a mirror image, which can look exactly the same, but it's not in the real world. It's just a mirror image. It's a reflection, right? In a pool of water, in a mirror. It's not the actual thing, right? And this is an analogy that's brought down in Hasidism and way before that too, right? Of embracing the king, right? When you come to see the king and he gets up and he embraces you, are you actually embracing the king? No, what you are physically embracing is probably his clothing, his garments, his robe. It's not him. But let's take it one step further. Say he disrobes and you embrace. Are you embracing him? No. Then you're embracing his skin, you're embracing his epidermis, you're not embracing him, because he works through his skin but is not his skin. And we go deeper, 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 deeper through that analogy, and we eventually get to that animating spirit, that breath of God, that soul, that image of God, that the external manifests, if we're lucky, right, through our actions and through our deeds, through our thoughts and words and prayers. So that's where we differ on the image of God and God in human form, because according to Torah, there is no God in human form, no such thing, never has been, never was, never will be, and that's that. That's one of the principles of the Torah. That's one of the principles of faith by Maimonides, and he brings that down from way before. He didn't make it up. Let's continue here. Jesus was the best of us, said Sneezer. Yes, you've mentioned this before, and again, I'm inclined to agree that if he was around, and if things written in the New Testament are true, and I'm speaking of the gospel and not things afterwards, then he certainly had a lot of wisdom. And even the Talmud says, if it is again, in fact, the same dude, that he was a student of Rabbi Yehoshua ben Prachia. Rabbi Yehoshua ben Prachia was a great sage and a Kabbalist, and he was his apprentice. He was one of his disciples. He was one of his pupils, right? Yeshua Notzri. And so, if indeed Yeshu, Jesus, was a disciple of a Tana, of a sage of the Mishnah, that already means that he was unbelievably versed and skilled and on a very high level, right? Spiritually and physically speaking. So when you say he was the best of us, I can go with that. We mean things differently, I think, when we say it, but I can go with that. I really can. Daniel 3:25 says Robert Harrison, this one. I see 4 men and the fourth look like a son of the gods. Okay. Wait, let's look in the JPS version. The JPS version. He answered and said, lo, I see 4 men loose walking in the midst of the fire, and they have no... Oh, where is it? I lost my spot here. And they have no hurt. And the appearance of the fourth is like a son of the gods. Okay. So this idea of 4 men, right, corresponding to the 4-letter name of God, corresponding to the 4 elements, corresponding to the 4 worlds, right, the 4 Kabbalistic worlds, corresponding to the 4 systems of the tree of life, right, of Abba, Ima, Ben, Bat, of father, mother, son, and daughter. And so the fourth is like a son of the gods that represents something that's lower. I mean, you could look at it in 2 ways. Either it's higher or lower, but it's one that stands out, right? There's something there that stands out, let's say. So again, without knowing the context right here, right now, without knowing the context here and now, look, I know it's the book of Daniel, and I know that it's something that he went through, right, with the king and all that. I can see that here, right, as I'm sort of going through it right here. But to see doesn't mean that there were actually people there, right? It's what do you see in your mind's eye? What is the vision that you are seeing? And in that sense, that vision which is manifesting, let's say metaphysically, or even if it was manifesting physically, it has to do with a spiritual root before anything else. It has to do with walking in the midst of a fire. It has to do with being alive when you ought to be dead, you know? Something like that. It's like the burning bush, right? The burning bush, meaning the bush that should have been consumed by the fire. And there was something great there. The revelation at the burning bush was something that did not appear again. The holy names of Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh, Ehyeh Shlachani Alechem, right? That Moses received, which he did not utter, which he did not repeat. There's something about that idea of a burning bush. In the same way, there's something here of 4 men walking in the midst of the fire and having no hurt, right? Just like the bush was not consumed by the fire. But I might be just looking way into it. I simply associatively, that's where I was sort of thrown. Bloodnose says, Jesus said he was the Word of God, also the Alpha and the Omega, right? The beginning and the end. Now, here's the thing. The idea of the beginning and the end also is written in, is it Isaiah? ראו אתה, אני ראשון, right? אני ראשון ואני אחרון. Basically, the prophet says, I am first and I am last. This has to do, again, with the tree of life, going down the center from crown to kingdom. And then, right, from top to bottom, and then from bottom to top. It's this back and forth between creator and creation. It's the back and forth that we embody. It's the back and forth that we what's the word I'm looking for? It's the back and forth that we engage in, right? This idea of the opposing forces and of yin and yang, of positive and negative, and of the balance and the tension between them, and that place in the middle where you can operate. And in that sense, the Alpha and the Omega is also personified, if you will, through the human being. Because on the one hand, you're Alpha, you're the soul. You have that spiritual element, a spark of divinity, a breath of God, so to speak. On the other hand, you have the Omega, because you are a finite creature. And so we have both. In that sense, we are the image of God. So Jesus said he was the Word, right? God spoke creation into being with a revelation of Word, of Yehi O, of let there be light. In the same way, we are the creators and shapers and movers and shakers of worlds. We are mini gods, right? Images of God, reflections of the Most High in how we conduct ourselves in the world. So if Jesus said he was the Word, the Alpha, the Omega, I can say the same thing about every human being. There's the possibility. Hi. Probably. Why, am I being too loud? Oh, then maybe she's not, or maybe she fell asleep with the light on. Tired woman. She is a tired woman. Lord bless her. Okay, BMXer, Sneezer says to BMXers, I agree that self-defense is not murder. Oh, so you see, this is something I missed earlier in the chat that I have no access to right now. I don't know why. I always used to be able to scroll up, but now it's simply sort of stopped. Should I'm afraid to reload this page, right? Because I'm looking at the monitor here. I'm afraid to reload the page because I'm going live here on the phone, so it won't affect the live stream, but it might affect the chat. So I think I would rather continue with the chat where it is right now. Forgiveness, I beg you, for those who said things in the chat that I did not get to, but I'm not able to scroll up for some reason, and now I can only scroll down from this point. All right? I agree that self-defense is not murder, says Sneezer to BMXers. However, what you find in modern society is a certain squeaky wheel claiming to be victim just to justify offense. He continues and says to Bloodhound, as has virtually every prophet while profiting, and it was truth. So Blood knows, right, yes, Blood knows, you're saying, Sneezer, you're saying to Blood knows what I said, that every human has the capacity to reach. Yes, exactly right. Yes, it was truth. Eat, but take it easy, man. It's almost midnight. Don't eat anything too heavy.
No.
Cool. Labriot, ma?
Bread.
I mean, look, if you want to have maybe a bowl of pasta, there's pasta. Have a bowl of soup. It's good, it's veggies, it's lentils. Oh, yeah, okay. Right, you should have some soup, am I right? Some good veggies and lentils and broccoli. I had it earlier. Magnificent. Let's continue here in the chat. I didn't do what? No, you should have soup. Let's see if... No, you should have soup.
Soup or...
Just go with soup. Look, you know what? Do as you will. I want to continue broadcasting here. Having so much fun, you guys. So much fun, guys and gals. Let's continue. Yes, it was just 8 episodes. Okay, so wow. So I'm reading a chat now by BMXers where way back I asked him what was the format of Vikings Valhalla. Is it a short thing? Is it a mini series? And how many episodes? How long?
That was yesterday.
No, that's now. He spoke of Valhalla yesterday, but I asked him about the format today. Now, I don't know how long ago, but now, only now am I reaching that particular piece of chat, which makes me believe that I have so much more to go through. Todaleya, thank God. I don't think I'm going to get to all of it. It's almost an hour and a half, and I think I'm going to say goodbye soon because I'm starting to feel a bit, off. And as always, I want to give you guys 110%. I will not want to settle for anything else, and I want to attribute, I attribute great significance and importance to the things you have to say, and I want to treat them as such. So when I start feeling tired, I must disengage, and I hope you don't find it, any disrespect. I try to go back to the chat, as you know, all the time, continuing from previous days and whatnot. And Sneezer, my God, I still have in my notes the comments you made on something from last week, I think, with the timestamps, that I only got to the first comment, to discuss it. I read all of it, if I'm not mistaken, but I only commented on the first one. Oy. Okay, let's continue here in the chat. BMXer says, yes, it was just 8 episodes. You'll probably find it boring or not like it at all because of all the bloodshed at times, but you might like the last episode. Well, look, I won't go against something simply because there's bloodshed. If it's written well and it's done, let's say, cinematically, in a way that's that captures the heart and the mind and the imagination, I'm all for it, right? I say that as a writer and certainly as a screenwriter. When I see something that is well written and well executed visually, it makes me want to go and read the script to see how the screenwriter actually wrote it out for the director to arrive at the conclusion and at the visual results that he or she did. I've done that. I've done that with different things where I sort of discovered the scripts going back after having watched whatever it was, the visual, and then going back to the text. Sheol comes from the Hebrew word to question. No, says Yodidiao. Well, question, to question is lish'ol, to question. And she'elah means question. Sheol, that's an interesting question. She'elah me'anyenet. Does Sheol come from the root of question? It does probably have the same root of, literally, of Shin Aleph Lamed. I wonder, that's a really good question. That's a really good question. I'm going to look into that, I hope. I definitely want to look into that. First of all, thank you, Yodidiau, for turning my attention to the fact that Sheol might have something to do with She'elah. It might not at all. And it might be, I say coincidence, but not coincidence. Hang on, I'm going to put this in my note. Yodidiahu, the Gimatria man. You don't mind if I still call you Gimatria man, right? Because I remember you way back. BMXer says, Yodidiahu, haven't seen you in ages, man. It's true, we have not seen you in ages. It is so much fun to see you here once again in the chat. I've been fortunate enough to meet with you and walk with you in the old city of Jerusalem itself, where we discussed matters of great importance. And I heard about things you were up to, and it was fun hanging out with you those few times. Really, it was. Okay, on that lovely note of creating a physical connection, of meeting, somebody from here in the chat, which I've done with several people from here in the chat who came to Israel. On that lovely, personal, and unique note, as far as I'm concerned, I'm going to say goodnight and goodbye from Jerusalem. Thank you all. I deeply appreciate your time, your kind and devoted attention, your chats, your comments, your likes, your subs, your engagement, your lack of engagement, your viewership. I don't take any of it for granted. It's so special and so lovely that I get to do this with you, that I learn from you, that I have my mind, the inquisitive part of me, the curious part of me is certainly receiving so much through your thoughtful comments and questions and wonderments, and it's very, right, it keeps the fire in me, and I love it. I really do love it. So, God willing, tomorrow, 10 p.m. Israel time, I will go back to this chat, I hope, and to previous comments and to other things that I should have gotten to today but didn't. So much to go through. Todalia. I give thanks to the Most High. I give thanks to you if you've made it this far, whether you're watching it live or you're watching it later. It is so awesome to have this little study group with you. I hope it continues. I hope that it grows organically, right? And I hope that we will be able to eventually to bring things down here to the practical world. Because, again, it's not an intellectual, it's also an intellectual pursuit. But more than anything, I want to bring things down to the surface. How does this help me conduct myself in the world? How does it help me be a better person? So may that be the light that guides us forward. Good night from Jerusalem. God willing, I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.